My name is Mike Minch, and I'm the President and CEO of Line 6. I'd like to take this opportunity first just to welcome all of you and thank you for taking the time to come with us today and share some of the excitement we have about some of these new products that we're bringing to market. I don't know how many of you might have remembered the days of the oxygen bars at Namm or the coffee carts, but if you do, you probably walked into this room and looked around and saw the kinds of products that we have, and for the first time said, wow, things are really different from those days. It's quite a transformation. And it is quite a transformation for us from our early days as pioneers in the guitar space to today coming out with products that address musicians across the entire band. And while these are different products, they actually share a lot of the same characteristics as our early guitar products. As a company, we've never really seen ourselves just as a guitar products company. We've actually seen ourselves as a music technology company. And we really try to do two things. One is we want to allow musicians to get a great sound. So if you think back to the pods, to the first amps, it was really all about, for the first time, giving guitarists effects, amp models, all in one device, a wide variety of tone and a wide range of tone, long before that was sort of standard in guitar amplifiers. And with pod, you could get that anytime you wanted it, day or night, 24 hours a day, in any kind of recording environment, from a high-end studio to a modified bedroom. So, one, making products that sound great, because when products sound great, guess what happens? Musicians give great performances. When they're confident, when they know what they're doing, when they feel like my gear is giving me great sound, they can worry about what they're there to do, which is make great music. The second thing we've always tried to do is make technology easy to use. Make it so that users can take their gear, solve the problems they need to solve with that gear, but just as quickly get on to the real joy of making music. And that commitment hasn't changed from our first products to the products you're going to see today. The products you're going to see today really embody that same capability, except instead of just guitarists, now people who are responsible for their own sound are going to be able, in any kind of venue, get the confidence to sound great without having to have the expertise and the depth that traditional live sound gear has required. So we're really excited about this, and that's going to be the focus that we're going to share with you this morning. But I also wanted to point out that we have a number of other products that we have recently announced. In the guitar space last year, we have come out with our new version of the James Tyler Variax. We have the extension of the DT family of guitar products, of amplifiers, that generation of amplifiers. And we came out with a number of additional additions to our Pod HD family. So while our focus today is to talk about the live sound space, we are still very much pursuing great new products for guitarists in the guitar space as well. And in addition to that, last week, we're now addressing some needs that users have in the mobile space with the ability to have some keyboards that easily hook up with one cable to an iOS, a Mac, or a PC environment and allow you to very quickly and easily get up and running making great music, which is really, at the end of the day, what we're all about. Making great music, giving people the confidence that they sound great, and removing the barriers that often exist between musicians and their creativity. So I think you'll agree, after seeing the stuff today, we're pretty excited about being able to bring this experience to all musicians, all the people in the band. And so with that, I hope, let's see, I'm going to turn this over at this point to Sean, who is going to be your MC for this demonstration, and I hope you really enjoy the next few minutes with us. Thank you.
Mike Minch. Good morning. Good morning. I would like to thank Mike for taking my entire intro. So I can go now. I can leave. So, Anyway, welcome to Namm 2012. My name is Sean Halley. What we're going to be talking about is sort of something a little different. Normally I would be spending this kind of space discussing all of the sort of new releases that we have available for the show. In addition to what Mike actually mentioned, we've got new firmware for the Pod HD that includes a Plexi and also a new bass amp, which is great. We have new builds for the Variacs, which actually include a bunch of very lovely, realistic sounding acoustic guitars. Bunch of stuff, but it's just rare when you get the opportunity to be able to talk about something that is really more of a paradigm shift in some ways. And so I am very excited to have that opportunity today. So we're going to be talking about basically Line 6's very firm foot forward into live sound. And by that I'm referring to the introduction of StageSource and StageScape. So if you think about, and what I really want to talk about today is challenges that face live musicians. And I'm speaking specifically of live musicians who mix themselves, if that makes sense. So not guys that are fortunate enough to have a sound guy, but people that are doing their own live sound. These people face similar challenges no matter what kind of music they play, no matter where they are, whatever. So if you think about those, for one, traditionally you need to be a pretty good sound guy to get consistently good results in different rooms. Acoustic environments are tricky, they're organic, they change. And so to get consistent mixes over all sorts of rooms, you have to kind of be good, which is hard, because to get that kind of knowledge, it takes a while to amass, and it also, you know, some people don't have that kind of time. As well, it can be tricky. If you think about the scalability of the systems that you buy and use, usually they do not scale upwards and downwards. And by that I mean, if you're playing some sort of a bistro set, let's say you're playing a coffee house or something, the needs that you have for your PA are rather light. You can purchase something very small and be able to play that gig well. However, if you want to be able to play for 1,000 people, no matter what that investment costs you, doesn't matter what it is, that investment is useless when you're trying to play for 1,000 people. There's nothing that little guy can do to help you play the big gig. Conversely, if you have a PA that is able to do 1,000 people, 2,000 people, and you want to be able to take pieces out of that larger system and be able to take them down to play a coffee house gig, that doesn't work either, right? So we're talking about something that doesn't scale at all. If you think about, think about being a musician, and there are lots of musicians here. If you're a kind of musician that plays 200 gigs a year and you do your own sound the whole time, and then you have those 5 gigs in the summer where you get to play a street festival or something like that, and you get a big stage and you get a sound guy or whatever, those are the best gigs. Those are the best gigs, they are. And so, traditionally when you're talking about it, you figure, oh, well, the reason why is because there's lots of people there and there's girls and whatever. Because, if you're a jazz guy, there's no girls at the club, right? So, yeah, you're playing fusion, that's the quickest way to not have women show up. But anyway. But the point being that the reason why those gigs are great, it is not because of the audience, it's not because of the space, it's because for the first time, those musicians don't have to worry about being the sound guy. For the first time, for those 5 times a year, those guys can just concentrate on being a musician. And the other challenge that really does face live musicians who do their own sound is that the contextual switch between right and left brain happens all the time. And every time you switch out of being a musician to be a tech guy, all sorts of nastiness happens, right? So basically, in order to discuss this, what I'd like to do is to turn your attention over here to stage 1, which is our coffee house bistro stage. Coffee meaning tea leaf, Starbucks, whatever. Oh, Starbucks really doesn't have live guys playing unless it's Kenny G or something. Okay. Now, if you look at these speakers, we're talking about the new StageSource line of speakers. So these guys here, are part of a larger ecosystem we're going to be talking about in a minute. But basically the L3T and the L3S are brand new speakers in the StageSource line from line 6. And they're a little bit different in the sense that they're intelligent enough, it's a networkable speaker, whatever, but it's intelligent enough to be a standalone PA on its own. And by that I mean, yeah, sure, and by standalone PA, it doesn't look like it's huge, but it puts out a very hefty 1,400 watts of speaker. So you have 2 10-inch drivers, you get a horn in the middle, and you have the ability to basically retune all sorts of stuff on it. But when you look at the mixer panel here on the side, so if we pop up to there, yes, so now you've got the L3T there. If you look at the mixer panel on the side, you can see that it has a full-featured 2-channel digital mixer built in. So you have 2 combi inputs right on the side, you have mic gain right on the side with a pad, and just in case you have something really crushing you're going to plug into it. I'm going to fall off, that was awesome. Did you check that out? I almost lost it, that was cool. Now, you got a 3-band EQ here with a sweepable mid for each channel. You have effects units built in, so you have a vocal doubler effect, like a modulator, and you also have a reverb built in. If you think about the largest scary thing that can happen in a live music environment, and I'm even referring to this room, thank you very much, it is the specter of feedback, right? Basically, am I putting my hand around the wrong tape? There we go. So the specter of feedback, in the sense that being able to kill feedback effectively takes usually a lot of gear and a lot of know-how. Actually, these guys have it built in. So there's a built-in 12-frequency feedback suppressor built into the speaker. So you enable it, and it searches the entire audio band, and it will kill up to 12 frequencies without you having to even think anything about it. And it does this in 3 different modes. So it can do it based upon something that's very light. It will seek for those frequencies maybe a little bit less constructively, and then basically you have one on the other end of the spectrum, which is completely, it will kill anything, meant for spoken word, where there's not going to be any musical instruments. So you can see it's very, very flexible. Now, also on the top, you have this thing that's labeled acoustic modeling. Traditionally, we knew this speaker in a coffee house kind of a scenario would be used for traditional singer-songwriter kind of vocal and acoustic guitar. The problem with most acoustic guitars is, if they're loaded with piezoelectric pickups, those pickups are based upon simple vibration from the string. They don't take in any of the body resonance into account when they're making noises. So, traditionally, when you plug in a guitar like that, it sounds pretty terrible. So this guy actually has Variax acoustic modeling built in. So if you have a traditional piezoelectric pickup in your guitar, and you plug it in and turn this guy on, you can dial in the amount of body size that you have for resonance, which is very, very cool. So it changes the world from that sort of plank of wood with the nylon strings wrapped across it that you normally hear in the coffee houses, and turns it into almost like a mic'd acoustic guitar sound, which is kind of great. Now if we move to the back panel, you can see even more stuff. So you basically, if we go from the top down, you've got line inputs, so you can use it to be fed from another mixer or something like that. You also have stereo inputs on coax, so it's actually 4 channels in, not just 2. So you can use it to feed things like an MP3 player, if you want to play over tracks, if you've got backing tracks you want to play with, all in one enclosure, right? Underneath that, you have the mix outs and the main outs, you have a master volume knob, but underneath this is a very important part of this speaker, and it's what we're calling smart speaker modes. Basically, the speaker has the ability to retune itself depending on what needs you have at that time. If you're using it as a PA speaker, traditionally they've been on PA. However, if you're doing a DJ gig, for instance, and you're only using commercially recorded music, it might make sense, because it's got, that stuff is very, very large on the bottom and very large on the top now. Maybe it might be nice to retune the speaker to give you more of a DJ-centric kind of a mix. Let's say you're a guitar player, and you've got a Pod HD 500 and a guitar, and you want to use a power amp and a Tune 212 cabinet. That's in there as well. So basically, as you flip through those modes, the speaker's response curves and the way that it throws audio is completely changed depending on what you want it to do. If you have an iPad or an iPhone, you're automatically familiar, or you're already familiar with that basic behavior where if you turn your iPad on the side, the screen flips into landscape. The reason it does that is because there's an accelerometer inside of those devices that lets them know when they're oriented horizontally or vertically. This guy has one too. So if you just turn this guy on its side, it automatically flips into monitor mode, which changes the way that the audio is fired back up at the performer. So it's super flexible. Basically, and underneath this, you have the jacks for L6 link, or line 6 link, which is a new protocol we just came up with for our live sound products that basically is a network-aware protocol. And what I mean by that is it passes digital audio, but it also passes digital information for basically configuring devices. So if you plug in 2 L3T devices together, or 2 L6 link enabled devices together, in some cases they will completely retune what they're doing and recalibrate what they're doing to better suit the guy that's just been plugged in with them. So if you plug in a subwoofer to this guy, the crossovers are automatically set. You don't have to do it. So I'll talk more about line 6 link in a minute. I mentioned those line 6 link jacks below. I want to talk a little bit more about this before we move on, if only because it's a very important part of the behavior of the StageSource speaker line, in the sense that it has the ability to know everything that's plugged into everything else, and it self-configures itself. You can't say self twice or 3 times in a sentence, at least you shouldn't. Anyway, if you were to plug 2 L3T speakers together with one single cable over L6 link, they know each other are aware, they know each other are alive. So that means that all of the stuff that you couldn't do with only one speaker, now you can do with 2. For instance, Your little coaxial line input jacks that are stereo, now they're stereo. Your reverb is now stereo. Your modulation effect is now stereo. Not only that, the input panels from both of the mixers mult. So now you have an 8-channel system where you originally had a 4. This is what I'm talking about in terms of that ability to scale upwards. Every time you sort of like add to your StageSource system, it doesn't just get better, it also gets smarter, gets faster, and it gives you more flexibility that you don't have to know how it works to do it. You don't have to flip any switches, you don't have to do anything. You plug into, it automatically works. So the question is this, and Mike sort of mentioned this a little bit. Why is it that Line 6 has gone into live sound? And the reason is because, and a lot of people maybe don't know this, which is why I'm mentioning it. The brain trust at Line 6 began by making a lot of devices for other companies, some of these devices for other companies changed people's minds about what was possible to do things, like the Alesis ADAT, for instance, if you guys are familiar. So it's not just that Line 6 has been making pods and guitar products. They've been making things for Oberheim and Alesis and everything for a long time. They're well versed in the idea of being musicians. So we're trying to provide musicians with more basically functionality and less sort of strain on your creative self, so you can perform better and be a better musician. Now here's the question: what happens when you need more? When you need not just speakers, but maybe you need more stuff. Let's walk over here. This is stage 2. This is our slightly larger venue. You see, is it the same height? Maybe I'm just taller than Jim. I feel tall now. There we go. So now here's the thing. So right now I have 4 L3T speakers plugged in. So I've got 2 guys here on the top, I've got 2 guys here on the floor. They're all connected via Line 6 link. So these guys automatically know that I'm going to be using them as a wedge. These guys automatically know that I'm going to be using them as mains. So let's say you need more control. You need more ability to sort of tune stuff. Maybe you want some more effects. Maybe you need more channels, whatever. At that point, you're going to need to have some sort of, I guess a mixer. Now here's the problem though. Think about how you interact with other people that know how you're speaking. If I'm at a live gig and I have a sound guy, I'll ask him, David, do me a favor, make it brighter, make it darker, can you make it fatter, whatever. I'm talking to him and he can parse what I'm asking and say, cool, I know how to do that, right? The problem with talking to a machine is the machine has to know how you're talking to it before you can talk to it. Does that make sense? That wasn't said very well, but you get the idea. The idea being that the machine, it would be nice if the machine was dang near as smart as a human being would be. Well, if you look over here, or actually go to the keynote for a second, we're introducing also, along with the speakers, the StageSource M20D. You can go to the next slide, sorry, Rich. So the M20D digital touchscreen mixer. So basically, this is it. It is a 20-input digital mixer. It has auto trimmable mic preamps. It has auto-sensing hardware input jacks. It actually has a solid 7-inch touchscreen in the middle that has a completely different idea about how to interact with mixing consoles. And it also has a load of DSP for channel-by-channel compressors, EQs, effects, all sorts of stuff. It also has the ability to be controlled by an iPad, which we'll talk about in a minute. It has the ability to be used as a recording interface. So you can connect a USB 2.0 drive to this thing and record all 20 channels right to the drive. You can use it as the interface for your DAW and use it that kind of way. Or if you'd like, you can also use it with a quick little 20-second quick capture loop without having to have any hardware installed, which I'll talk about in a minute. But this is the guy right here. So if we switch over to this camera, you can see that this dude is the M20D. So you're seeing a live shot of it, and you can see that because I've already got all these guys plugged in it automatically knows there's 2 monitors plugged in, it knows what's going on, it knows I've got these speakers hooked up. And so the paradigm is that the channels represent your mixing on a stage. So this is supposed to be something to where you can walk up to it and say, hey, there's a picture of Bob, it's even named Bob, I should hit Bob and affect him, right? So all you have to do is take a mic, plug it in, and watch what happens. It automatically creates a channel for you, lets you move it around. You can position it on the stage wherever you'd like it. If you'd like, you can also make it larger or smaller, depending on how many channels you have on stage. It might be something where you've got a lot of guys on stage and you want them to be small, whatever. And you've got the ability sort of to adjust that. So as I said before, if you're using traditional terms that you already know how they work, it makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to switch mics here and see if this works. Stand by. All right, so now, theoretically, I am coming out of the stage. So, there we go. All right, so now I'm coming out of these speakers. So back to my setup page, so you can see that this is what's going on. So if I hit my little tweak button here, it brings me up to a basically easy channel page, if that makes sense. So the idea is these XY pads are XY panners that change between different parameters. And you can see that the layout of them, they're using descriptors you already know what they mean. Body, bright, dark, deep, all those kind of things, right? So it automatically makes sense to somebody who doesn't necessarily know how to do live sound. So as I move my hand across the XY panner, it changes the sound of the microphone based upon what those musical descriptors are. So if I say, right? So you've got all this ability to sort of move towards a word you recognize and stop when your hand sort of works. Sounds the closest to your hand, basically. That didn't come off right. All right, so. Now, this kind of operation, of course, using these XY panners work for the compressor. So this is obviously the tone tab is the EQ, the punch tab is the compressor, right? So these kinds of, this way of working probably won't be kind of way that some people would probably prefer. If you're sort of like, perhaps I am, and you actually know how EQ works, you probably prefer that you can see all the values, and you can do that. So for that, you would go into advanced tweak mode. So if you see the little image of the hat here for this dude, that's the graduate's hat. See, you gotta be smart. You gotta be smart to use this stuff. Now check this out. So all of a sudden, you can see all of, for one, you can see the signal channel, what's going on, right? So let's do this. Before I even get there, I wanted to show you this. So here where my finger is, you can see there's this thing that we're calling sort of the preset carousel. That makes sense? So each one of those pictures represents a preset, custom built for that kind of instrument. So it changes signal processing, it changes effects, it changes EQ, it changes what effects are loaded, all sorts of stuff. So as you select a preset, it will basically change the signal processing on that channel better to fit what the big brain guys of Line 6 thought would be really great for kick drum. So if I turn this down for a second just to make sure that I don't want to hurt anyone, stand by. I'm going to select the picture of the angry young male singer. Dude's angry, all right, cool. And of course, every preset has lots of reverb on it. So we're going to just go down a little bit. I think that's just a little excessive. All right, cool. So now you can see that when I go into tweak mode, for one, you can see there's a real-time RTA, which is happening there behind you, right? You can see that basically this is your channel strip laid out. So you've got your inputs channel strip, which is at the top. You have your high-pass filter. You have your dynamic EQ. You've got a compressor built in. You also have a 6-band EQ. So any of the interaction with this stuff is if you already know what's going on, you can affect it just like you expect to. So it works both in an easy sort of a mode, and also works in a mode that a much more advanced user is going to be happy with. So there's plenty of processing in here to completely make any advanced user excitable. So now, if you're looking at basically the idea of StageScape, and one of the promises of it is that every time you play a venue, you learn about it, right? Every time you play a venue, you learn a little bit more. You come back to the same club, and you're like, you know what? There is a bass bloom over right near the bathroom, right where it smells bad, and we need to fix that. So the great thing about an environment like this is that you can save every setup and every scene that you have from your gig, and the next time you get back, you can basically come back to exactly right where you were, right when you turned the power off the last time you played that show. So that's everything. It's the entire mixer architecture, it's the monitors, everything. So you have the ability to improve every time you go back to a club, as opposed to starting over, which is traditionally what happens. So, wish me luck. I'm going to try to recall the scene now. Hang on. Give a second. Stand by. Let's see if this works. There we go. Cool. All right, so now I'm back up. Stand by. Now, one of the great things about Line 6 Link if you look over here, is that you can configure the output of those guys depending on what's going on. So this is your sort of configure page. Because it's all digital, the auto-sensing jacks aren't going to help you out there. So you can basically say, cool, you know what? This is great. So if you want to do, for instance, monitor mixes, if you look at the great little sort of encirclement there, it's telling you that that is the monitor you're going to be adjusting. So if I turn my own monitor send down here, you can see that it makes this great little graphic to show you that, and I can move it farther away so you can see how cool the graphic is. It's like Space Invaders. Right, so it's cool. So I can turn myself down the monitor because I didn't really need that much. So, and also you select another monitor, and there you go. So you've got a little bit less there. Now, in order to better exemplify what's going on here, I'd like to call up my friend Philip Bino, bass player extraordinaire, who I'm sure all of you have seen many times from his appearances on the Today Show, The Tonight Show, and Dinner with Regis. Now, Philip is going to be playing an upright bass. You lie.
I'm just really big.
Yeah, exactly. Sweet. All right, so if we go back to perform here, so we've got the bass. Let's see if that actually comes back. It'd be nice if it did. Oh, I gotta plug it in, right? So here, stand by. I do this again just because I don't want to kill anyone. Stand by. Genius. So by the way, I should mention that there's no subwoofers going on right now. So, you know, all the like lovely low end that's coming off is just coming off these little speakers. So imagine what happens when you plug this up. So what I was thinking is maybe you want to do like a tune?
Yeah.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? It's alpha, folks. Okay. So you have this system where you're able to scale all of these solutions, right? So pieces of that system work there, pieces of that system work here. So I want to make sure that we're getting that point, because when you start looking at having to have a larger system like this represents an investment, right? I mean, this represents something you got to shell out hard-earned cash for. This system behind you is 10,000 watts. So to be able to take that first investment, which is just as valid on the coffeehouse stage, and have it allow you to help play for 1,000 people, that's a big deal, right? So this kind of situation here, when we start talking about live music, and you start talking about larger systems, it becomes important to be able to handle all these elements, because one of the other challenges that live musicians that do their own sound face is that as the system gets more complex to run, basically you're switching back and forth between being performer guy a lot more often, because you've got extra monitors, you know, all this kind of stuff. So basically the mixer handles all that stuff for you.
New market development, line 6, and hopefully you'll see this sort of array of products here as an example of some of the new markets we're going into. I want to start off by saying, didn't that sound great? Didn't that absolutely sound stunning? And if you notice, there's a lack of, to get those results, typically you have a front of house engineer, a monitor engineer, a system tech, but if you look, you haven't seen any of that. There's no front of house engineer, there's no monitor engineer. And that's, to get those results, that's what we want to get. We want to get to as performers, as musicians. I mean, how many people play or have played in a band? Here, so raise your hands, right? Now, do you want to be the sound guy when you're playing? No. Why? It's because you're performing. Performing, it's a truly creative, emotional experience. The last thing you want to do is be the engineer. And that's the sort of friction that Mike and Sean and these products, this demonstration sort of really exemplifies. It's reducing that friction, these barriers to getting that result that you're there. You turn up to play and perform and make that connection with your audience. And that's the goal. That's what we're really, really, really trying to do here. And I think you've seen through the demonstration that we've made some leaps and bounds to actually get there with the StageSource products, StageScape, and our digital wireless microphones as well, solving problems for the musicians. You don't have to worry about whether you've got the right frequency for the town you're playing in. You don't have to worry about the thing, interference, so it's full, uncompressed audio, full bandwidth. Scalability of the speakers, you make that investment, Shaw mentioned it earlier. You invest in that speaker out of this whole array of different things and different things you might do as a performer. And there you go, you invest in that and it will do it all. It will live with you through your career, from doing that in a coffee shop to doing this and you've seen the artistry here and the definition, the way we can scale that up. And you know what? Line 6, it's not new to us, right? We've done this sort of reducing this friction, this context switching between right brain and left brain engineering functions before. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce the man that has basically sort of led this friction or frictionless process in developing products and growing Line 6. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce Marcus Ryle.
I know you guys have been sitting for a while, so I will keep this short. But, you know, I feel really fortunate that I've been involved in products now for over 30 years, and it seems about once every decade or so, I get the privilege to be involved in something that can really change how people make music. You know, I got to help in developing the original Oberheim system, where before MIDI existed, songwriters could actually make songs by themselves in their bedroom. It's a whopping 8 voices. It cost about $10,000. But it was a breakthrough at the time. And then about 10 years after that, we had the ADAT, and that really democratized being able to make great recordings at home. And it was about 10 years after that that we introduced modeling for guitar players with the pod and the amps. And this is, at the risk of it just sounding like silly hype, I really am quite excited about this having just a significant impact for musicians everywhere. I myself have had to play many hundreds of gigs where I'm stuck being the sound man as well. We've really just scratched the surface in this little demonstration of the type of enabling technology we have here to make it really easy for musicians of all types and in all kinds of venues to get incredibly good sound consistently, and as Mike said at the very beginning, so that they can get back to focusing on why they're there, which is making music, expressing themselves. That's why we all got into making music in the first place. We've got something to say. You need the gear that can really help you say it. So thank you all very much again for coming. Please make sure that you see Sarah and grab a media kit if you haven't already. And have a great show. Thank you.